Hey gang, I'm not gonna do the usual spiel to open the episode because this is not gonna be like anything else that we have done. Hi, we're the Creepypasta Book Club. Normally we read and discuss creepypastas, no sleeps, and web horror flash fiction. We are your hosts, Jonah.
And Wednesday.
But today, our topic of discussion is not technically web horror, or I would say even really a story, because we're talking about Blood of Hercules, published by Jasmine in August 2024, the worst published book I've ever read, because we read the whole book and we suffered so much that our only possible recourse was to make content out of it.
It was like horror to us.
Yeah, it was not good. It was painful for us. I'm gonna do a quick recap of the book for any of you who haven't read it, and I don't recommend reading it, frankly. There's going to be spoilers incoming for the whole book. Warning ahead of time for discussions of child abuse, sexual assault, and some other nasty topics. Before we get stuck into it, I want to do a quick plug for you guys. I've been releasing a fiction podcast called Dear Evelyn that I would love for you to check out. It follows Sparrow as they return to their hometown of Keen's Cross after the death of their father and attempt to reopen their mother's 20-year-old cold case. Currently, when this episode releases, the podcast is on a short hiatus so I can get caught back up. I do a lot of work for the podcast, and I'm very proud of it. There's also an alternate reality game with puzzles and stuff for you guys to check out, and it would mean so much to me to have your support. Thank you. Alexis Hurt has the worst life ever. It's the post-apocalypse dystopia, and she's an orphan girl with evil foster parents who are constantly fucked up on their special drink made of bleach and mold, and one day, she finds a magic snake, Nyx, and then she gets a magic little brother, Charlie. Her foster parents decide to kill them because they don't have enough food, and in the ensuing altercation, Alexis is beaten so hard she loses hearing and sight on her left side, and her one eye turns white, and her foster mother inexplicably dies after. She and Charlie are rendered homeless for the next 9 years, living in a cardboard box in the woods. Alexis is super smart, the smartest ever basically, and she's studying for the big test that would let her go to God College because 50 years ago the Spartans, who were dope-ass immortals with magic powers, returned to the Earth to take over after the Titans, who were like left-for-dead zombies, kind of, ravaged the land and killed most of the people. At the end of the test, Alexis does her blood test, and it sets the paper on fire. It turns out she's part Spartan. She is immediately juiced with enough adrenaline to kill a horse, and thrown into the Spartan arena, where she's going to compete in the Initiation Massacre, where all the non-immortal Spartan 19-year-olds get to compete for a chance to go through the Crucible, even though Spartans are, to be clear, an endangered species with fertility issues, but whatever. Once they hit 20, they'll become immortal, so all the initiates kill each other, and Alexis comes out the other end alive, with 9 boys alongside her. She gets assigned 2 mentors, Patroclus and Achilles, who are not the guys from the Iliad, so just forget about that. Patroclus is like a sexy guy, and he's Aphrodite's half-human kid, and Achilles wears a muzzle because he has voice powers, and he's Ares' half-human kid. They're like mean to her and stuff because they think that she's the daughter of Zeus and they hate Zeus. But they're also kind of into her, even though they're like committed gay soulmates. So there's 2 general sort of types of Spartans. There's Olympians and Chthonics, and a long time ago, the Chthonics, who were the families of Hades, Aphrodite, Ares, and Artemis, even though a good 3/4 of those guys are not Chthonic. They tried to murder all of the Olympians for being too pussy, and they started a war, which they then lost. Now Chthonics are like second-class citizens in Sparta, even though they're the most technically powerful, and there's also only like 8 of them left. Alexis goes to the Crucible, which is basically just boring boot camp, where they have to read a bunch of books and run up a mountain for 4 straight months without sleeping or eating. There, she encounters Professor Augustus, Ares' heir, and Charon, Artemis' heir, who were, like, dark and sexy or whatever, and they, like, bully and stalk her, and they threaten anyone who gets near her, but she thinks that they're just, like, being mean to her, even though they, like, want to fuck down on her crazy style, because they've realized she's actually a secret Chthonic, and they need to protect her, and also there's, like, this marriage law that means that all the Spartans have to get married at age 26, but the Chthonics can't marry any of the other Chthonics on the list, so they want to have their, like, fascist pureblood babies with her, because she's not on the list. And that goes on for, like, a while. That's most of the book. Alexis meets some sirens, and then one of them who was touching up on her gets his eyes mailed to her in a box. Someone starts sending her notes telling her she better drop out. She gets like a stupid whack-ass dog that everyone hates, as well as another box of body parts harvested from a fellow initiate, Maximum. At the end of the Crucible, Alexis goes to the mask ball with her friend Helen, who's Augustus and Patroclus's half-sister, and she gets sexually assaulted by Charon and Augustus. Someone causes a ruckus, and some guy called Theros, who's the heir of Zeus, shows up and kidnaps Alexis and Helen, and ties them up in a shack to get eaten by Titans. Alexis frees herself by, ripping her hands off, basically, and then she saves Helen, and they teleport to safety. Alexis kicks the shit out of Theros, and she uses some freaky magic powers that she's had the whole time to almost kill him before Patroclus teaches her how to control them. And it turns out that all the people who mysteriously died around her were killed by her evil, crazy blood magic that can kill anyone, even an immortal. Then Augustus and Charon revealed that they tricked Alexis into becoming betrothed to them because the 2 boxes were her betrothal gifts, and Alexis doesn't want to do it, but she just kind of, goes with it so the plot can happen. And she reunites with Charlie, who lives in Sparta now. They take him to Sparta, and she gets married, but Patroclus and Achilles, they've fallen in love with her, and now they're plotting their revenge for how to get her back. So what do you think?
Oh, I thought that was a good summary of what the book we read. If you thought any of that sounded, exciting, it's not written very exciting.
No, it is.
It's written like a grocery list, kind of,
It is a bunch of stuff that should be exciting, and there are a couple of moments where we got, kind of hype, because so much of the book is so fucking boring.
We forgot what we were doing. Yeah, there's, a really cool fight scene really early on that never happens again to that level. That's, really...
The best scene in the book is Alexis, she fucking snaps, and she beats someone to unconsciousness with a chair, and that ruled.
It ruled. She, throws up on his body, yeah.
It's going too far with it, and the scene still isn't good by any means. No part of this book is written competently, but it's at least not boring. The fact that she was willing to get, a little bit gonzo with the action after so many pages and pages of just boring bullshit was oh, that's refreshing.
Yeah, this kind of nonsense in a story is fine as long as... No, it's not fine. But, it is more fine when it's, batshit. There's a lot of that in here, but it's not the right kind. I don't know how to explain it. It's in Jeff the Killer OG, when everyone's exploding and, in blood, because people are being punched and stuff. That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Her beating that kid with a chair and throwing up on him is the equivalent of Jeff the Killer punching a kid in the chest so hard his heart stops.
Yeah. That's good. That's the stuff. But in the book, everyone's, exploding constantly, so it feels like nothing, but doesn't feel like that kind of, schlocky, gore spectacle. Also, I don't think we brought this up when you were listening to the summary. This is a book for adults, obviously, because there's sex in it. But there's a book for adults, but it's written, kidlit.
It is written at a middle grade level, yeah. It genuinely is, the prose is... It's some of the most illiterate writing that I have ever encountered, including in, actual, fanfiction published by teens and people who only read fanfiction, you know? That's what this is. It is a book written by someone who only reads fanfiction and midlit, and, erotica written by people who only read fanfiction and midlit.
It's all just a funnel down to one singular slop drop. We were passing, the PDF was getting passed around, and I read, the first, 3 paragraphs, and I was oh no, Jonah, you gotta read this, I can't do this.
We doubled our suffering by reading this out loud. Well, my suffering. Wednesday got to experience it audibly instead of... Because, oh man.
Me. Gentle.
I looked at the, Storygraph reviews after finishing the book, and there's a lot of positive sentiment on there, which, a lot of it is just because people are stupid, but a lot of people were saying, oh my god, the audiobook was so amazing.
Yes, the narrator must bring it.
Your experience of this terrible book is being saved by having a narrator who is just, fun. I have to assume that's what's going on here, because this is a fucking intolerable experience.
Yeah, I put myself in line, which is a wild concept. You have to get in line for an audiobook that's digital format, but whatever. But I'm like 88th. It says I'll get in like 5 months. Like, what the fuck is anyone doing? What are we all doing here?
You could probably find it somewhere for free, but like,
yeah,
it's way more of a pain in the ass than just getting like a free PDF, which like we can do that anywhere.
Yeah, someone should fix that. It used to not be as hard, and that's like impossible.
We need to steal audiobooks more often.
It's not even a crime. Like, it's bonkers to be like, oh yeah, library, positive vibes, but then get like angry at people like circulating an audio file or a PDF. Like, okay, you know? In the book, there's also like USA Western capitalism, even though the gods have returned.
Yeah,
and they're
okay.
from, like ancient.
Yeah, let's talk about the world building first of all, because that's sort of the most glaring thing that you could probably, like, even with like a summary that was like doing favors for the book, that's probably the thing that's gonna stand out the most. Like, I wasn't doing this book any favors with the way that I was recapping it. I was trying to give you an honest experience of what it feels like to read it. But even someone who was like trying to kind of hype this book up, you are probably, if you know anything about mythology or just like anything about the world itself, this book is going to be confusing to you. Like, it's supposed to be a quote-unquote Greek myth retelling, but it does not feel as though it has any basis in any version of any mythology from anywhere in the world. One, why are they called Spartans? That doesn't make any sense. They are not even, like, historically, you know, more attributable to the culture of Sparta than anywhere else. Like, our historical understanding of the Greek gods is very much like a mishmash of stuff that survived with heavy prejudice from the perspective of Athens, because that was sort of the center of a lot of dominant Greek culture.
Yeah. A large span of history and a lot of like stuff we have connected now just wasn't then. But like that aside, it's not even hitting pop culture like Greek mythology. It's just sort of like,
it is fundamentally like violating even stuff that you would expect someone to learn from fucking Percy Jackson. Like, one of the things that consistently drove me crazy, and it's a tiny detail, but it pissed me off every single time I saw it, is that Augustus and Charon, who are both quote-unquote chthonic heirs, Augustus is like the child of Aphrodite and Ares, and Charon is the child of Artemis and Erebus.
Which, that's wild, right?
I mean, yes. Artemis should not be having I think there are possibly, depending on, like, different cultural things, some versions in which Artemis is not the virgin goddess, right? But that's sort of the predominant idea that we currently have of her. But, like, they are constantly, their smell is described as being like a lightning storm. What are you talking about? There's a lightning man!
Like, I think what she's going for is kind of like that earthy, like that, but like there's a word for that. It starts with a P.
Petrichor?
Yeah, I think she's going for that, but isn't.
Well, she's not describing that in any way. She's describing the smell of, like, electricity.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, like... Like, I guess kudos to her for not doing the, like, he smelled like amber and the sea and something that was just perfectly, characteristically, unidentifiably Augustus.
Yeah, it's just sort of gendered, right? It's like, just, because, like, that's just sort of like a gendered smell. Like, so she's describing them as macho, manly as possible in these, like, straight fanfic spaces. But it's like, no, pay attention to what you're right. Pay attention to your story, please.
Pay attention to, like, the themes. Like, if you want to give them a signature scent or whatever, like, make it a thematic thing that they smell like.
Yeah. Like, power laid. Also, her sense of, like, powers and, like, magic and world building is also really whack. We get all this hype up of, like these group have, like, scary, evil powers, but...
Yeah, the chthonics are described in... First of all, there's an info dump chapter at the very beginning of the book, which is fucking infuriating, because there's nothing in there that doesn't get explained over the course of the book.
Several times. Billion times.
It's just there for people who are too stupid to pay attention.
Including the author.
Yeah, chthonics are said to have, like, super fucked up, scary powers that only exist to, like, cause harm. Versus, like, Olympians they've been sort of, like, culturally cast as, like, the good guys or whatever.
That's not really reflecting the story, but not in any kind of, like, fun, like, oh, you thought this, but it's actually that sort of way. It just seems like this person doesn't understand.
No, it's fully not commented on that most of the chthonics have powers that are just sort of neutral. Like, they're not even particular. Like, Patroclus's power, we found out at the very end, is that he has truth powers, basically. Like, he can, if he touches you while you're talking, he is a human lie detector.
They're like a traditionally superhero power to have, like...
Very silly, very minor compared to the way that it is sort of built up. Yeah. As, like, oh, you know, god powers are so incredible. But it's not like Patroclus can tell if anyone is lying anytime he's talking to them. He has to be touching you. That's a pretty narrow use case.
Yeah, and also that's not really a scary power.
No! It's not a power that causes harm, though.
If you yourself are some sort of, like, someone who lies without the ability not to lie, I suppose that would be a scary problem, a scary power to encounter.
But, like, there's no consequence to this. It's just brought up, like, at the very last minute so that he can be a human lie detector. Like, it is not relevant throughout the entire fucking story.
No. Nor does it feel relevant to, like, his character or how he moves about the world or anything.
He's portrayed in such a fucking weird way.
I brought up that lying thing because Jasmine Moss claims she has many sort of degrees that we feel are dubious.
Hey, so I'm in the editing booth right now, and I have a little bit of new information to share. At the time that we recorded this podcast, Wednesday and I were like truly fully convinced that Jasmine was lying about her credentials due to some odd wording and other discrepancies, but we were able to look into her a little deeper. We found her real human name, which obviously I will not share for legal reasons, but it does seem like she got the degrees that she claims to have, which when you think about it is more depressing. In addition to that, her father is a high-ranking officer in the Marine Corps, which might explain a couple of things, like why she's so fixated on this weird, miserable boot camp experience, why the love interests are defense contractors, and why she has no frame of reference for how poor people live. She's also a Habitat for Humanity girly, so I guess she knows a thing or two about constructing people garbage homes made of cardboard. So, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any kind of actual deception going on like we suspected. It turns out she's just a slop writer, and the fault really is on HarperCollins for releasing this without any kind of editing. The publishing industry needs to do better. She is, infamously, if you were on Tumblr, infamously got caught plagiarizing a Tumblr post in her, I think her Psycho Shifters series.
Yeah.
There's a post from, I think it was 2021, that's like, mentally I'm a slut, physically I'm afraid of intimacy, and she fully, like, lifted that line. And there's some other things that I saw in this book that I'm like, oh, I saw that post on Tumblr. You know?
I was there for that.
One of the ones I noticed before I saw the Tumblr plagiarism thing and realized, oh my god, this is the same woman. She repeats the, like, blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb myth. Like, there's this urban legend that actually blood is thicker than water means the opposite, and the full phrase was lost over time. This is simply not true. There's no historical evidence to suggest this was ever the case. It's a misinterpretation that's gotten a lot of traction through social media. I see people say that it came from Facebook, but I first heard it way back in the day on Tumblr. That was like a 2013 classic. Maybe even older than that. Like, we fully have her number. We know where she's getting some of this stuff.
It's this kind of behavior that's, like, acceptable if you're, like, in a fandom space and you're just sort of, like, unwell and you're gassing yourself up and making, like, a persona. But you're, like a published author with, like, an art page and a public persona. You can't just be like, this is the real world, I guess, you know? Like, a barrier of what's acceptable.
It is not illegal to lie about having a degree from anywhere.
And, like, write a book, yeah.
And maybe she does. Maybe she's just the dumbest lawyer in America.
Listen, all you need is money to get into certain places. Doesn't mean you have a quality of person. I feel like people should realize that more.
I hope this is a radicalizing experience for some people.
Yeah, like, people put certain, like, professions on a pedestal, but those are, like, price kept, price gated. And some rich people, most rich people are pretty sheltered. So
you can say stupid.
Are pretty stupid. So, like, research your lawyers, I guess, if you're in the market for one.
The ultimate, look at my lawyer dog, I'm going to jail.
Periodically through the book, that was, like, the only thought I had about the book. Like,
yeah.
She's also very uninterested in building the law, which is, like, the structure, like, the very foundation of her world. The marriage law is so
It's so fucking not, like, her understanding of the way that law intersects with power is so fascinating. Like, it feels like a deeply sheltered liberal in, like, the capital
like,
L sense,
yeah.
right? Like, there's this thing that comes up when Charon and Augustus, like, announce that they are engaged to Alexis, and they don't say that they tricked her or anything, but we as the reader know that she was tricked.
Yeah.
But, like, when they say this, Zeus, who is, like, the leader of the Olympians, who are, like, the group that are in power, and they have created this law in order to force the chthonics to marry out and, like, essentially, like, dilute the ability for chthonics to create a power base through, like, concentrating that chthonic power, because chthonics are supposed to be, like, way more powerful than Olympians, who, like, are sucky and they're lame and their powers are shit or whatever. But,
it's
like, everyone has lame powers, like, whatever. She has them do this thing, and Zeus is really upset about it because, like, after he realizes that Alexis, who is, like, super powerful and smart and talented, and he was, like, gonna possibly name her his new heir and, like, kick Theros off the laurels.
Yeah, which is pretty funny. That was a pretty funny, like, moment in a really bad book. Like, Zeus being like, oh, great, I got...
Zeus's characterization is, like, one of the very few kudos that I will give her because, like, that's a funny portrayal of Zeus. He's sort of the only one who feels like he's being portrayed in a way that I'm like, yeah, I could believe that that's Zeus in a story, you know? He's
kind of like a sleazy businessman, deadbeat dad with kids. Like, all these kids he has, like, die, and we don't really get the sense that he's
just shrugging about it. He's like, oh, fuck, whatever.
He's like, oh, got another one on tap. Good thing I planned it in advance.
Snapping his fingers, fucking like, damn, I'm still stuck with Theros. Like, he can't wait to just name someone else who isn't Theros. Which is why Theros has to, like, kill everybody else.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. Good for you, Jasmine. So, okay, he was forced by fate to push the marriage law through when they were sort of hemming and hawing about it, and she was like, lower the age range to 26, make him get married real fast. And he was like, okay, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Which is like, it's basically essentially baby.
Yeah! Culturally, this is like they're agreeing to make child brides, like...
Yeah, she walks in the middle of them discussing, like, I think the minimum age should be 1 century. That is a good, mature age to be married. That's, like, a regular, like, adult age. And she bursts in, like, they gotta get married when they're in the womb. They gotta be... like, these people barely have their immortality. She's doing a lot here. It's sort of like, we're reading it so it's not icky because they're not 18, except everyone's portrayed, like, baby infant and stuff.
Yeah, everyone is written as though they're emotionally high schoolers. Anyway, so they are butting heads with Zeus, even though he wants to oppose it, because they haven't technically broken the law, because they found this loophole, he is not allowed to interrupt the marriage and say, like, no, you can't do that because she's chthonic and we have agreed based on the law. Like, because they're following the word of the law but not the spirit of the law, there's nothing that he can do. Where, like, in real life, that's not how this works. Like, people who are in power are not bound by the letter of the law. Especially, like, within a very closed, small group like this, where they're, like, explicitly, like, tyrannical leaders who have, like, fucked up morals. Like, there's no reason for him to abide by this law.
He should turn them into, like, dust with his lightning powers. He should exile them. Like, book 2 should be like, oh, they got exiled and they're gonna come back and get you, but it's not. They're like, oh, shucks, you guys got me.
In this moment, nobody wants Alexis to marry these two guys, except
These two
for
guys.
the two guys who have done this. Like, if Zeus, at this very moment, was like, absolutely the fuck not, you're not doing that, we're gonna arrange, like, a different marriage situation for Alexis, Hades, who is the leader of the Chthonics, and her dad, would instantly go along with it, because she clearly does not want to marry these men, even though she won't say anything about it.
Hades is so, like, why is he allowing this if he's, like, the leader of this group? Like, he should not be allowing this, and they should be suddenly, like, disillusioned, like, oh, he's too weak to lead the Chthonics into power. We must do something about it. Evil style.
Like, nobody wants this to happen. The only reason people are allowing it to happen is because it is a contrivance, because Jasmine is writing explicitly to hit tropes and beats that she wants to be in the story, even though it contradicts things that we can observe about the world as we are looking at the page of the book that she has put in front of us.
Yeah. It's like, you should know the shorthand of the fanfic world that she's pulling these things from, and it's like, no. Because it's not a fanfiction, it's a novel you're publishing. People don't have that, Jasmine.
The law comes up a couple more times in, like, bizarre and inexplicable ways. Like, nothing in this world makes sense. When Alexis's foster mother dies, the police show up, and all she has to do is say, like, yeah, my foster dad killed her, and they immediately send him to jail for life. But also, like, librarians at the school can freely shoot teenage children in the penis. So it's like the Wild West, and there's no due process, but the government still provides free schooling and rations and electricity and stuff. I feel like I have no perspective on how this world works. It's so frustrating. And on top of that, like, throughout the book, Alexis is a deeply frustrating character, because, like, not only is she so unfunny, so terminally unfunny, but she's also just, like, the most fucking passive protagonist.
She's also, this is not related to the very moment we're talking about, but she's also mean and a bigot throughout the entire book.
Yeah,
she's
oh my god!
Deeply a pleasant person to be with.
She's so fucking rude.
Yeah, like, a protagonist doesn't have to be nice, but, like,
people will be around her just being, like, fucking nice. She reacts to people being nice and normal to her, as though they are rubbing shit in her face. Like, and she usually doesn't say anything about it, but, like, the thought process that she goes through, it's like, oh my god, I hate this bitch. Like, she constantly talks about killing herself, and every single time we would be like, I wish you would.
Yeah, do it, okay? That's another thing. It's sort of like, Jasmine gets, like, her cake and eats it, too, with that, because she's like, oh, I want to kill myself so bad. Oh, I'm so scared of dying. Oh, this thing is killing me. Like, oh, pick one. I want to hear it.
She never says that she's, like, scared to die, but she, like, Alexis is truly, like, a non-entity. Like, she makes a point of, like, every time Alexis is in peril, she's always paired up with at least one other person, so that she can show how, like, actually morally righteous she is, because she always leaps in to try to defend the other person, even though this is not, like, a thing that seems like it would be supported by her personality, the thoughts that we see her think. Like, it's not like she ever stands up for people outside of life or death situations. She's not scrappy. She's not, like, tough. She's not resilient in any particular way. She's not a person who picks fights. I fucking wish she was. That would be interesting. But she's just an extremely dull character who putters through the book, and then every now and then she has to be a badass because that makes her, like, a morally good person.
She gets used to do this, like, girl boss, like Jasmine comes off as, like, a hard L liberal, right? Like, so she's not feminist in any way, but she flirts with this kind of, like, I'm a girl, so I have political stink line powers or whatever. God. You know what I mean?
The fucking, she likes using feminist phrases in, like, sort of a bizarre joke context. Like, there's this one that she uses, like, 3 times throughout the book, which is in addition to a bunch of other random lines like pussy power and quips about, like, the patriarchy that are really out of place and feel sarcastic. She says, free the nipple and the lips, parentheses vaginal. Because, okay, like, Alexis, like, gets her clothes torn off during the initiation massacre, because, like, everybody does. Like, everyone's ripping everybody's clothes off.
They should be naked during it. Not, like, I'd want to read that or anything, but just, like, historical context, they should be...
Yeah, that would feel like a true, Greek cultural thing. You wrestle naked. Yeah. That's the done thing. Also, hang on. Sorry, I just realized something. Karen and Augustus freaked the fuck out about the doctor. This is a thought that just occurred to me. They freaked the fuck out about the doctor trying to expose her breasts because he wanted to cop a feel or whatever, which is like a bullshit thing that they had to throw in so that Augustus was a good guy for killing this, like, evil rapist doctor. And instead of him just, like, being a doctor and Augustus just being evil. Anyway, they freaked the fuck out about this. But also, like, she was naked in front of all of Sparta at the initiation massacre. She got all her fucking clothes torn off. And everybody's seen fucking all the goods. What are you talking about?
Jasmine forgot.
They're like, oh, if her naked body had been exposed, she'd be disgraced, she'd be dishonored. Everybody has seen this bitch naked.
They didn't care then, so they care now, but so that doesn't count. Anything that happened before they knew, that's like a mulligan.
If they were gonna go through the route of, like, Charon being immediately crazy psycho obsessed with her or whatever, and, like, Mondo horny for her, she could have at least picked that moment instead of, like, when she ends up at Achilles and Patroclus's stupid fucking beach house. He shows up there because they're, like, bros and they all hang out, and he, like, becomes obsessed with her because they're funny. Like, hey, can you help us give her medicine? This bitch sucks and we hate her.
Yeah,
and he becomes, like, totally enamored with her.
We have this cringe girl, and he's like, oh...
Charon was funny until, like, 3/4 of the way through the book when I think she forgot what his personality was and just made him, like, a clone of Augustus. It really sucked.
Yeah,
this was, like, fucking really, like, funny at first. Like, in terms of, like, being, like, an over-the-top alpha male guy. Like, just the way that he was written. He is a vampire, basically. That's his whole thing, is that, like, Augustus is, like, a mean bully teacher guy. Charon's just a vampire.
He's like the Snape, and, like... what's his face is like the Draco, I guess, in her, like, story. A peak moment for this character is when she's freaking out, like, panic attack style, and he's like, oh, we're not having, like, a mutual sicko moment, you're having, like, an actual panic attack, what's your safe word, and stuff like that, like...
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of awesome. It's kind of good for this character.
And she totally walks that back by having him later completely disregard her boundaries. That seemed like it was gonna maybe go somewhere and be, like, a characterizing moment for him, that he's this guy who, like, I've never read ACOTAR, but I am obsessed with watching roasts of it.
And I get secondhand via Jonah.
It is fully third-hand information about ACOTAR that you have received.
And that's all I want. I don't want the main source. I just want it, like, drooled down to me.
We got excited about this moment at the Titan attack because we became just, like, briefly enamored with the idea of, like a dark romance love triangle thing, where on one side is a guy who seems like a normal jerk, and on the other side is a guy who's doing, like, a shadow daddy Sigma Alpha bad boy thing. But over the course of the story, we realize the normal asshole love interest guy is, like, a major all-time sicko crazy path blood-soaked freak, and the shadow daddy is just LARPing? And how fucking funny and amazing that would be?
She stole that from us. She had that and it was like, and crunched it in her hands in front of us.
Another crime that she has done to us.
Yeah. Unforgivable.
Ugh. And, like, the idea of, like, a character who's having basically, like, a misunderstanding and then drops the act when he realizes that he is legit upset her and she is not playing along with him.
Yeah, like, that was just, like, a nice little moment, and it's just, like, that was just there and gone.
I mentioned ACOTAR because in my notes I wrote, like, if Rhysand thought Feyre was into CNC, and that means nothing to you, but...
No. I know what some of those words mean. And, like, in her unwriting of stuff, she avoids having, like, any conflict in her story that's supposed to be, like, super dramatic filled. Like, if this guy was like, oh, she's not playing along, actually, this is kind of, like, fucked up Augustus, who's my platonic, heterosexual, polycule...
boy best friend soulmate.
Yeah. And Augustus is like, you don't have what it takes to bring back the bloodline. And they have like this big split because he wants to fuck down regardless of what girl wants. And he's like, oh no, I can't let that happen. I have to stop Augustus or whatever. Like if there was an antagonist like conflict, and then he'd have to wait against like, oh, can I tell the other boys? No, I can't tell them because they wouldn't agree with this. Oh, I'm alone in this endeavor of protecting her. And like that gets ramped up to its own sort of like crazy nonsense, right? Like if there was something going on.
It would be so easy to make this story in any way compelling, but because it is so, like, the Earth here has been fucking salted. It's so barren. Like, there is a moment after the Titan attack where Charon is talking to Augustus, and he's like, oh my god, she's, like, legit traumatized. I don't know if we can go through with this. And Augustus is like, no, we have to, you stupid cuck. And he just sort of is like, yeah, you're right. And just, like, it never comes up again.
Yeah, like, hey, that's only something. Really, like, oh, no, that's not the phrase. Smothering the baby in the crib.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's that. It's that thing that I wasn't sure of. It's like, she has these ideas that are almost ideas, and then she, like, unwrites them, or whatever. It's just very frustrating to read. It's, like, real time.
It is, for a story that is supposed to be, like, a dark fantasy, it has, like, borderline, like, coffee shop vibes to it. Plotting. But, like, if the coffee shop was just, like, we're put in the crucible to give the illusion that she is in danger or, like, under stress, but she just sort of does the same thing over and over again, and she's not in physical danger, really.
She also does this, like, time skip between, like, anything that people find compelling about this kind of genre stuff. Like, we don't get the test part, that's already done. Like, the familiar stuff gets really built up, and then it's just, like, a really stupid, like, same note thing, except when there's, like, sexual harassment.
She does the exact same scene, like, 3 different times around the selection of the stupid dog, which is called Fluffy Jr., by the way.
Oh, she's so bad at names in a way that's, like...
She's so bad at names!
She feels like a 12-year-old. Like, like a 12-year-old's like, oh, I named this dog Fluffy because, like, Harry Potter, and it's funny to name a dog that, and also this is Fluffy. There's a tone that's weird in the story related to that. It's like, she doesn't understand that she needs to herself take this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
So it feels like she's, like, it's, like, funny that she got assaulted in front of all these people and no one cares. Like, it's really gruesome.
Yeah. Like, it's not even like she's doing it in, like, a sort of, like, rape fantasy, ravishment fantasy kind of way. She is explicitly writing it like a joke, in the same kind of tone that she writes Alexis doing, like, quote-unquote feminist slogans, you know, usually with her own stupid little twist.
Like, when you read Something on Something Awful from, like, 2002, that's the tone all her stuff takes, but without that being online in that subsection. It's like she has a different vocab that's very online core, which Alexis has really painfully, and it's supposed to take place in, like, the future where there's no internet.
This takes place in the year, like, 2100. Almost. Mm-hmm. It's 2099 going on 2100. It ends the story 2100. The internet, has been basically knocked out for 50 years. That's another thing. Jasmine has no concept of
how the internet works.
Of how anything works. Of
or
things
like
labor, supply chain. People are still driving yellow buses to take children to school.
That runs on gas.
Where are they getting the petrol? Where are they getting... Yeah. She describes X, Y, and Z. One of the things that helps you get through life as a teenage girl or whatever is menstrual cups. They're making menstrual cups? I thought it was the fucking post-apocalypse.
Girl, it's hard to get those regular style now.
You have a rag. You live in the woods. You live in a box, bitch.
Yeah. The cardboard box bit feels like, what in a little cardboard box joke?
It's so fucking irritating.
Every time. Like, I hear that, it's...
That's another thing. Cardboard degrades pretty fast. Where's she getting the cardboard? Is cardboard production still active? Has it not been phased out by superior Spartan tech? Mass production takes a whole elaborate supply chain that seems unrealistic, but as far as we can tell, nobody seems to work anymore, and most people died.
There is, like, a minor character that plays a major role in Alexis's, like, psyche, It's like the priest character. And
Father John, who never appears in the story.
It does not make sense that these kids were not going to live with the church if the church exists currently.
Yeah.
And, like, why does it exist? They're literally...
It would explain so much about her character. That she is, like, a weird religious prude. Like, why does she talk about this guy? Like, the reason why she doesn't go and live with the priest is because Jasmine thought that it would be darker and sadder and, like, more fucked up and twisted and, like, torturing my characters, LOL, if she lived wet in a cardboard box all alone with her stupid brother and her stupid dog.
But, like, she could go with the priest and then they go back in the woods. They could be like, oh, this is...
The priest dies. He has a heart attack after a couple of years.
Yeah, or they feel like they're burdening the ministry and they're going to hell for it or something.
One of the things that I proposed as we were sort of trying to theory craft about, like, how to make this book better is, like, he's not, like, a real figure in their lives. He's, like a radio televangelist kind of guy.
Yeah, well, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Like, just, like, anything. It just feels like stuff is, like, inside jokes in a Discord server with 14-year-olds, and it's, like, it makes a bad story.
It really feels like, what's that one... It's like a BTS Twitter joke that's like, I hate when everyone has to show up in the fanfic, why Jim and the bus driver all of a sudden, or just something like that.
Yeah, that's it.
I can't remember which member it was. Sorry if you like BTS.
No, I feel, yeah, whatever it is, we can put in the notes.
Cited sources.
Yeah, it feels like that. Another thing, it feels like she writes it in, like, the production value you do, like, in a fanfic if you weren't particularly concerned with, like, crafting or whatever, is that, like, every chapter feels like it has to be a standalone update.
Yeah.
And where she forgets some components of the previous chapter.
It reads like unedited Wattpad stuff.
Yeah,
it feels like this did not receive any editing whatsoever. And the places where it does feel like it was edited feels like it's edited in a way that caused I can't even call them 2 drafts of this story. The, like, 0.5 and other 0.5 drafts of this story. 0.25 drafts of this story apiece, actually, I think. This isn't a full story by itself.
No.
To, like, become, like, disjointed from one another.
I won't say she used AI to write this whole thing, but some of the parts feel like she might have done, like, plopped it in to get to, like, A to B a little bit, and I've seen people be like, oh no, it'd be more of a mess, but I don't think people realize how good these, like, machines are anymore. Your average video game you're gonna play that's, like, not, if you don't know the dev, and it's meant to be, like, kind of a heavy hitter that, like, costs money and has, like, streamer bait, you're gonna see, like a chat note every once in a while, you know? Like, and you probably won't tell the difference if you're not, like, consuming a lot of it.
I feel like this does not have AI in it just because of how consistently bad the writing is. Like the thing with AI, right? If there's one part of this that I suspect of being AI, it is the lore dump at the very beginning of the book. Because that reads like an AI summary that you would see on, like, an Amazon bookstore book, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean, but, like, there's sometimes, like, a segment between, like, connecting parts, I guess, where, like, she repeats, like, the same word over and over again, and I feel like even a bad writer would catch that.
I don't think that's AI. I think that is just that she's fucking stupid and she's not paying attention.
That's true. Like, she might, what it might be is she might be doing a tremendous amount of copy-pasting from, like, different drafts, too. Like, there's something, there's an unnatural, like, flow, like, when we're talking about, like, between scenes sometimes.
Like, truly, I think she just, like, she has so few ideas that she has simply used all of them by the end of the first 5 chapters or so. Like,
well, that's true.
One of the things I think you're talking about is she uses things to create sort of like a text-based page break, where she will use things like time warped to describe the fact that she doesn't want to write what comes in the middle of this. That doesn't feel like an AI quirk to me. That feels like Jasmine. That just feels like she's doing something wrong. Or, like, she tends to really abuse certain, like, she creates stock phrases that she can throw in for filler, like talking about arousal as nausea, or, like, butterflies fluttered, or talking about phantom pains in her wrists randomly, or, like, screams echoed. And that's another thing real quick. She has this really assed writing style that I see from dumb people who think that their writing will sound really poetic if they, like, omit articles and possessives. So she'll just start a sentence with an unclaimed noun and then just stops the sentence. Again, like butterflies fluttered, screams echoed. They almost feel like sentence fragments, but she uses them so often and they read really unnaturally for their placement because she doesn't understand how to use something like this right. And that feels very organic to me because it's stylistic and wrong.
If you read so much, like, bad stuff, you become the bad stuff kind of situation. Like, and some of, like, the wordage reads very, like... So, like, if you read a whole bunch of, like, stuff that is pre-generative, and then you, like, turn that into your writing, that could be it.
I don't think it is about reading AI works. I think she just genuinely only reads fanfiction.
Yeah.
And, like, she has, like, a lot of people do not have a sniff test. Like, they just don't have a quality sensor. As long as something gives them instant gratification, satisfies their need to see, you know, X, Y, and Z trope or see X, Y, and Z words on the page because that's what's going to get their rocks off, emotionally or sexually, then that's all that it takes for them to be like, wow, what a great story.
That's true, yeah. I'm just...
And that's what this reads like to me, is that, like, she was not paying attention to what she was writing. She just has a series of, like, things that she thinks are funny and words that she thinks are compelling and sort of cheat codes that she has, like, hacked into her story in order to make writing extremely efficient and to make it, like, flow really quickly.
She writes a fucking megaton.
Yeah.
It's just such an alien mindset that's hard to, like, imagine a person doing that.
I mean, she is writing as though she is the human equivalent of AI, which is probably why you're being like, this reads like AI, because she is not thinking about each word as she is writing it, you know? In the same way that AI cannot think about the words as they're writing them.
I don't read a lot of, like, I do read a lot of garbage, but I don't read, like, a particular kind of, a brand of garbage.
I do.
Like, I know. I don't think it's good for you. But, like, it's... like... So sometimes,
I'm fascinated by a certain type of, like, dark fantasy.
Yeah, kind of badness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure I have equivalent bad pockets I end up into.
Well, yeah, like, that's like you with, like, Gorge Wreck.
Oh, I do, like, yeah. This kind of fits nicely between the two, because there's a lot of, like, people exploding everywhere, and, like... I don't think she realizes how
she's
so
much better at writing people exploding than she is at anything else.
Yeah, and it's just crazy.
So funny.
It's
like, girl, you should be writing splatter.
Yeah,
you're wasted in this dark romantasy shit. Like, you can't do that. Like, you're bad at this.
Okay, she writes a fight scene where Alexis gets her eye punched so hard it changes colors. It's like, it's crazy. People's bones shatter and break. A kid drowns to death.
Her eye changing color every now and then. I remember that her eye changed color because she got punched in the head so hard.
Oh, what else is there? Like, people are just, like, massacre and turn to, like, pink mist. Like, it kind of fucking goes if it wasn't so poorly written.
She, like, when she has to escape the Titans, like, she has to, like, break her wrists to slip out of the, like, binding around her hands, but she doesn't just, like, break her wrists and dislocate her thumbs or whatever.
Yeah,
she mashes her hands until her bones are poking out of the skin and stuff. Like, what are you talking about? I don't think you need to do that to escape from, like, ropes around your wrist.
No, but, like, everything is so extreme, but also deeply hollow. So it's just... It's so strange. It's
also really talented of her to get none of her blood on Helen and accidentally kill her with her blood magic.
Yeah, she kind of forgets that she like, Alexis could kill people with her blood, but it's like only one's like inconvenient to Alex or something. It's kind of...
It's exclusively when it would be convenient for the plot for her to kill someone.
Yeah, plot convenient blood magic.
Because, like, it's supposed to activate when her blood has gotten on another person and she is in some kind of distress. It will activate. So, like, she's in distress, and she is grabbing at Helen's, like, bare thigh where she has a knife strapped to her leg so that she can get her ropes, like, cut off of her hands.
Yeah, she should kill Helen. It only kills boys.
Well, no, she killed her foster mom. Trans narrative.
Yeah. That would have solved all her problems, you see. She would have, like, gotten off the drink and stuff. Divorced her husband. I think this is a big jump, but I realized how much it was bothering me as we were talking. Like, at the end, yeah, she just goes through all this stuff and is like, milk soft, just like, whatever. But at the end, she's, like, lying in bed with these two people who have gotten her into, like, a non-con marriage and stuff, and is like, oh, I'll get my revenge, I'll get the girl boss, like...
They have no idea how powerful I really am.
Bill style.
Bitch, none of us do. What are you talking about? You did nothing.
It's so stupid. It's so, like... You can't just be like, yeah, girl boss, and then just, like, have your girl, like, roll through the story.
Like, I don't know if Jasmine thinks that she has written a strong female character in Alexis.
No.
She hasn't.
I don't think she thinks that's a positive trait to Jasmine, is the thing.
She talks, like, in her sort of, like, about me blurb stuff, she's like, Jasmine Maz loves writing about strong women and alpha men, like that's sort of her thing, is that she you know, brags about how, like, she writes, like, girls who are complex and badass. Like, no, you don't, I don't think, if your books are this quality.
Also, I read her summaries out loud to Jonah, and, like, the Psycho Shifter series hits, like, exact beats of, like, the Blood of Hercules series in a single book.
It's so crazy.
So you can just... Yeah, so you just read the Blood of Hercules instead of reading her Psycho series, if you're
I've heard that Psycho Shifters is, like, significantly worse than Blood of Hercules, which is impressive.
Fucking how?
I feel like it would be better, right? Because a big part of what's wrong with Blood of Hercules is that she is misattributing and misunderstanding so much of Greek mythology in a way that is, like, very confusing when you first start out.
Story worse.
You get into a rhythm with it, but, like, all the stuff that she is getting so deeply wrong for no reason, and, like, just taking wildly out of context, makes it really, really disorienting. And, like, if this were an original thing and not... I mean, it has to be a Greek myth retelling, because that's the marketing niche that she's going for. That's the way that this book is making money, is because Greek myth retellings are really popular, especially in, like, dark romance right now.
And it's like, listen, you don't have to do things, like, to a T, if you're doing it, like, in a way that you're bringing the whole book to it, but, like, she's doing it as a shorthand for things, and then not explaining her shorthand within the narrative of the story. Like, we're just to understand what's going on in her mind about, like, why a character is named this way, or, like, why the world is this way.
It's so fucking weird. Why are they called Achilles and Patroclus? Do they know about the Iliad in this world?
Yeah.
Like,
like,
why do humans... Because canonically, Spartans, like, existed at that time, and then, like, human civilization evolved and, like, encountered the Spartans, and then the Spartans decided to go away because the humans were getting too uppity, and they wanted to kill the Spartans. Because they can be kind of killed, you can, like, chop them up and scatter them into pieces, and they'll be unable to, like, come back or whatever, like, until you gather up the pieces.
Like, does the mythology exist in this world, or is this a world absent of this kind of cultural touch points? Like,
she describes in that lore dump chapter that they faded into myth, and, like, it is strongly implying that this is supposed to be our world. It's just that, like, back in the history times, the Spartans were, like, the Greek gods, the people that the Greek myths were based on, were, like, real dudes, and they lived in this specific way, and they were, like, everyone was really chill, and it was, like, a super peaceful society or whatever.
It's like, she doesn't pick, like, Atlantis to do this. She doesn't pick, like, any kind of, like, mythological, like, basis.
Why not call them Atlanteans?
Yeah, there's, like, Sparta didn't exist in the time, space that you're placing them in history.
If you want to get real racist with it, Hyperborea even, right?
Yeah. So even sort of like the romance fantasy, or whatever, like some of the genre trappings of it, like, would just inherently piss me off, I think, even if it was a good story. So, yeah, so how's that not going for it, I think? Not that it's like romance or fantasy, it's just sort of...
Well, like, romantasy is sort of like, you know how, like, certain types of animals, when they, like, crossbreed, like when horses and donkeys crossbreed, they make like a bigger thing. Sometimes that happens in the opposite way, where like when two species mix, they make something that is like smaller and shittier and like more fucked up. And that's what's happened with romantasy. It has taken the intersection of romance and fantasy and made it worse. Yeah, it is like it has subtracted something fundamentally in this way that it has met in the genre of romantasy. And like romantic fantasies are awesome, right? Yeah. There are some really, really good ones out there. I love romance, and I love fantasy. The core appeal of this, like, this is part of, like, the enemies to lovers trend. Yeah. Right? And that's one of the things that drives me really, really, really crazy, is that it's not actually enemies to lovers.
It doesn't hit all this book. Listen, first off, he's, like, the dynamic isn't correct here. They're not equivalent. No, yeah. In order for it to be enemies to lovers, you have to be equals. You have to be equals to the enemies, and they are not equal. There's a power dynamic here. It is student-teacher. It is citizen, non-citizen. It is like an age gap. Like, enemies to lovers has to be like, you and I are like students at school. We are rivals, and then we'll be lovers or whatever people are fucking into in dark academia. Like,
yeah, like this is a bully romance, which is also very popular, but I feel like people should just stop conflating enemies to lovers and bully romance, because they are very rarely the same thing. Like, you can, kind of, if you are very, very careful, but, like, most of the time, you can't have both, because they're just, like, incompatible. To bully someone, you have to have power over them. To be someone's enemy, in terms of enemies to lovers, you do have to be able to... Because the appeal of enemies to lovers is that there is mutual movement of both people, like, involved, or all people, I guess, since this is a reverse harem story, all people have to move towards an emotional compromise by the end of the story. And that's the thing that creates the appeal for a lot of people, over something like friends to lovers, which usually involves a somewhat less drastic, like, change, or a less mutual change, possibly, because you'll often go from, like, someone who's like, oh no, I see you as, like, my sibling, I couldn't feel that way to you, to someone who is, like, in love with them, and then by the end, they have moved their position, and that's sort of, like, the conflict of the story. Whereas in enemies to lovers, it's usually a bigger conflict, and the conflict causes them to change more drastically by the end. More drama, it can be very juicy. I love Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is probably my favorite book. Like, it's not even a Stockholm Syndrome story, because she doesn't like them by the end.
That's the thing, too. The protagonist herself is sort of like, I don't think this is great. I don't want any part of this, and I don't think this is good. And it's being presented as though she, like, her desire to not have this is a part of something, like, stupid that needs to be broken. But the narration itself sort of, like, supports her worldview constantly, too. Like, it's very strange.
Jasmine has created this, like, oversexed bisexual world to emphasize Alexis's virginity and naivety, and she's, like, super, like, touch-averse and, like, is like, really uncomfortable with sex and finds penises sort of, like, fascinating in that they, like, revile her, basically. And then at the end, like, after her, like, forced marriage that she hates and doesn't want to be a part of, she gets, like, fucking threesomed on, oral sex, basically. And it's, like, and she's, like, super into it. She, like, consents to it in this moment, I think, so that it doesn't seem too yucky or whatever, but like no, yucky. This is still like her saying yes in this moment. Like, it's still not, it's still like a non-consensual fantasy that this is sort of revolving around. Like, you can't like just lean into it, go whole hog. Who gives a shit at this point? Like,
like, it's kind of like a common, like, straight, I guess any bodice for sort of like porno fantasy, right? But it's just like she's like trying to do both things. She's trying to like, oh, this is a really fucked up right thing, but like wink to the camera, you need to consent. I'm like, shut the hell up. You're doing this thing. I don't care. You're like, that's so, like, either do it or don't do it. You don't get both.
They ask for her consent now after they, like, straight up, like, sexually assaulted her in the middle of the dance and were ignoring her as she was, like, screaming and saying no and, like, trying to get someone to rescue her, basically.
And the whole time the wedding is like, she doesn't want to go through with it. She is, like, physically shackled to them via magic. And it's like, oh, now she's okay because she's getting some, like, go die.
This character, who has been nothing but negative and uncomfortable with sex the entire time, should not be super into it in this moment.
Yeah. Afterwards, she's lying in bed thinking how she's gonna get revenge. Like, what? Like, if she's like, oh, well, maybe this isn't that bad. Like, you know, she's like, oh, don't. Like, if there was some sort of, like, dire kind of, like...
Like, if she was leaning into a sort of, like, Stockholm Syndrome-y kind of, like, dumb ravishment fantasy thing.
Yeah.
Like, it would at least be like, oh, okay, well, this is just, like, silly erotica now.
Yeah.
And I would be less harsh on it. But the fact that she just, like, doesn't seem to understand how to write the story that she claims she's trying to write is so infuriating.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's irresponsible, really, what she's doing. Because, like, a mega fuck ton of people are reading it now. And they're reading this, like, and I'm sure a lot of people are reading it the same way we are reading it in abject horror. But, like, now it, like, exists. And, like, it's just another drop in a bucket of stuff that portrays things like this.
And that also comes on top of, like, the weird way Alexis seems to regard feminism just in general as the way that she talks about it in the story always frames it as, like, sort of, like, silly and frivolous, and she sort of treats it with the same lack of gravity that she does, like, Alexis's suicidality. Like, Alexis has sort of, like, a passive suicidal thing that she's constantly doing in her narration of being like, oh, I wish I would just die already, and, like, one that doesn't feel like it's actually seriously bringing across her trauma or, like, a serious depiction of someone who wants to kill herself but is sort of, like, hanging on because she would feel too guilty about doing it, which is a character you can portray.
Yeah. Like, she's also, like, mega Christian or whatever. Like, she could have all kinds of, like, various morality, like, conflicts with doing it. Like, oh, I don't want to go to hell after all this just because I want to kill myself, so I'm gonna...
Like, just anything, any kind of sauce on this dry-ass story. It just comes across like Jasmine thinks that it's, like, a funny joke for someone to be suicidal.
It's just girl stuff, you know.
People who actually are suicidal get to make jokes about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a way of doing dark humor, and then there's a way of doing, like, trivializing humor, right?
This is definitely, like, the trivializing camp, and then she thinks, like, the author thinks it's funny. Like, I don't... Like, she's, like, she writes these little jokes in her thing, and we're not in on them. We're, like, for Jasmine. Oh, right. To the proofreading, she cites two, like, proofreaders with, like, their online names. Like, they just do dirty, I think. Also, but, like, citing their online names and not, like, their flesh names is really funny. Like, oh, you didn't actually look over my, like, I don't think she's this smart, but, like, you didn't actually look over my manuscript. This is, like, a call-out post in book form. Like...
No, I'm pretty sure she was citing them because they're her, like, online friends who did her beta, or claimed that they did her beta reading or whatever. Like, the way that she writes is so Wattpad. Because, like, on AO3, people don't do that, like, cliffhanger, trailhead thing that she does at the end of her chapters.
Yeah, and she explains stuff at the start again.
That's a very Wattpad thing.
She could be on the other things, but she has picked up, like, things from these spaces more than others. Because there's, like, definitely, like, AO3, like, traits people pick up, and she has pretty much Wattpad, like, pheromone.
She just, like, the way that she writes stuff, and the way that she characterizes people's narration, she seems like a very nasty person.
Yeah.
Like, the way that Alexis thinks about everyone around her, and we are clearly supposed to, like, buy into the way that she thinks about people because, like, almost every single time, if Alexis has, like, bad vibes from someone or thinks that they're, like, a shitty person, we're supposed to agree with her because usually they end up being, like, some kind of creep. Like, with Maximum, who is, like, portrayed as just sort of, like, a slightly annoying guy with blue hair.
Yeah.
And then he, like, comes up to her and, like, kisses her without permission, which is, like, bad, and you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But before that, he's just, like, a normal guy.
Yeah. Or, like, this one kid where she just crazy kills for no reason. Who's just sort of like, hey, we should be friends. You look cool, and I wanted to be friends, and he gets murdered for that?
Yeah, he's like, oh, we're like, half-siblings.
Yeah.
Well, like, he gets murdered because it's what she had to do to, like, establish Alexis's powers in front of Charon. So it's purely like a plot thing, but also Alexis...
It's kind of framed like she doesn't like him, so her powers worked more. It's just... it's framed in like a... Like, she's like, oh, I hope this guy explodes and dies. I hate that he's talking to me. What a freak. And it's just like, he's just saying hi. It's so weird.
Yeah. Oh, there's this weird thing with, like, she keeps pulling back to...
High school Tim Tom?
One of the guys at her high school. Yeah, Tim Tom.
He's just like a nice gay kid who did nothing mean to her, and she brings him up constantly, like, in a really negative and nasty way, and he's just sort of like a gay guy in class. It's very strange.
Since the Spartans are all slutty bisexuals, human society has changed to mirror them, so everyone's a slutty bisexual now. Tim Tom constantly talks about, like, wanting to get dicked down by big dudes with big dicks and stuff, and, like, making, like, crass sexual jokes about dicks in butts and stuff.
Yeah, and she puts him on the same, like, mental I hate you level as, like, her school bully.
Yeah, like this girl who is, like, constantly being, like, ew, you fucking stink, like, like, actively bullying her. And we never, like... If he was bullying her, we should have seen that on the page, or at least had her describe the fact that he was a bully. But it just comes off like she's mad at this guy for being annoying and existing near her. Yeah, and kind of being homophobic about it. Which also kind of feels like what's going on with Maximum, the blue-haired guy. Yeah. He has blue hair.
Blue hair and pronouns. Jasmine has made, like, this bisexual utopia world in order for a character to be more homophobic.
Like, the only straight woman alive, and she gets to be homophobic to all the characters.
Yeah!
And there's also this implication that the Spartans are, like, slutty bisexuals just because they don't have enough women to go around. And there's this, like, essential spiritual imbalance to their society. So every guy who sees her is instantly driven to horny madness, and they turn into a sex pest. Even though we know that Olympians actively couple up with human women, and they're perfectly compatible with them. It's a way to make Alexis really special and justify being the center of everyone's attention, while also having this, like, misogyny fantasy about how you need strong men to protect you from rapists.
Like, she's going to write the bisexual world. Like, she's the girl pussy wedge between Augustus and what's-his-face.
Charon. And also, she's the girl pussy wedge between Achilles and Patroclus, who are gay soulmates, who, like, they wish that they could marry each other, but because of the chthonic law, they can't, and they're in a committed relationship, and they're not interested in, like, branching out to anybody else, and people don't respect that because they're bisexual, which is crazy in this, like, society where everybody is bisexual, but whatever.
So... But, like, Alexis comes along and they're like, oh, here's a girl with a pussy that we all like, and it's like... Okay, well, that's... I don't think so that's true. I feel like that would not apply to these men, especially since Alexis is not really a catch in any way.
She is hitting that sort of generic romance protagonist, like, YA girl kind of thing, where she's, like... She's attractive because she's, like, chill, and she's, like, not like other girls. She doesn't care about, like, hair and makeup and stuff, and, like, ugh, her hair's frizzy all the time, but, like, she doesn't really care, and, like, she doesn't have big boobs like some dumb slut. Like, she's just, like, a real girl. Like, that's really how it comes off. And she's into math. That's a thing. She constantly talks about math and talks about her, like... For some reason, Jasmine picked a couple of, like, historical mathematicians to be her, like... crush obsession or whatever.
She brings up the fact that she writes fan fiction about math people so often. Why does she know what fan fiction is? She has no other hobbies. Like, It's so childish.
It's so weird.
She's so awful to Helen, who's presented as like this.
I love Helen.
Helen's a good character, and this, yeah, like not intentionally good. It's good because we like her. No. Like, we like that she's like...
It's good because Jasmine is trying to make us hate her so hard, and we're being perverse about it.
Yeah, she's, like, bubbly, and...
We're like, no, Helen's funny, actually.
Yeah, she's, like, bubbly and sheltered, and, like, extra girly, and we're supposed to hate her. And she,
like, speaks in TikTok-isms. And she says cunt, like, that she's like, oh my god, Alexis, you're serving cunt in that dress. Like, so funny of her. And Alexis has to be scandalized, which is another thing where it's like, Jasmine, are you homophobic? Like, what's going on here? What's your problem with serving cunt?
Like, she has created a girl character to heal the world of its homosexuality. Like, I feel like that's the conflict in the story. And so the story feels, like, bizarre and empty because, like, we're not some sort of Florida homophobe.
And also, she can't seem to imagine a world with any kind of meaningful, like, gender variance. Like, every girl is a hyper-feminine bimbo, except Alexis, who is still, like, femme, but in, like, a sloppy, not like other girls, cool girl way. And every guy is, like, hyper-masculine to the extent of feeling like it's like a parody. And, like, this is supposed to be, like, in a world where we've supposedly broken down cultural homophobia and where the end game is going to be a reverse harem, you would expect to see some less narrow standards for gender norms. But it's not, because this is, like, a super bioessentialist breeding fantasy about making perfect eugenics babies. If Jasmine is only into ripped-ass Captain America-looking motherfuckers, that's her preference, I guess. But, like, can we not get one, like, surly twink top? Like, I'm just saying. It's also, like, you know, related to all of these, like, little inside jokes that she does. She's so fucking unfunny. She has a handful of jokes, and she hammers them in over and over. Like,
oh my god.
Like, mathematician fan fiction, birds are robots, homophobic jokes,
bad dog stuff.
Yeah, like, really stupid jokes about, like, the dog, for some arbitrary reason, is constantly, like, choking itself on a stick that it's trying to eat or something. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's just like a random core goof that she's doing.
Yeah. She's just an immature person, I think. It reads at least authentically like this person has some sort of maturity of problems, you know? And it's not just... Like, sometimes people write, when they write a lot, they're not, like, thinking about what they're doing, and you can tell. And, like, there's a difference in quality level between the writing they're trying and the writing they're just, like, plopping down to get that book check. But Jasmine Mays feels like someone who's genuinely, like...
No, she's genuinely untalented.
Yeah, untalented and, like, arrested in some sort of... Has not needed to be more immature than, like, she was in high school at any point in her life.
I don't get how so many people think that Alexis's inner monologue is funny. Like, oh my god, another irritating thing that, like, Wednesday didn't have to experience this, but I did.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at it.
Speaks in parentheticals all the time that will, like, she'll say something, she'll make, like, an under-exaggeration, and then put what's actually happening in parentheses, and she does it so often, and it's such a telegraphed and irritating joke after just 2 times, frankly, of seeing it.
Yeah.
I don't know why she decided that was going to be the core of this character's, like, stylistic voice.
You know, one of the proofreaders was like, oh, I thought that was good, so maybe she, like, hammered down on it. Like, monkey paw, finger curling one sort of situation. But, like when you read it out loud, sometimes it's, like, it's impossible to tell. Like it feels redundant because she's, like, repeating the sentences.
I would almost always say parentheses out loud so that you would know how often it was happening.
Yeah.
And how stupid it was.
Every single character, every single part of the story has the same exact tone throughout.
Yeah.
There's no variation.
There's 3 other POVs. One of them we only get for 1 chapter, but there's 3 other POVs that we get throughout the book. They all have the exact same voice. Like, the only thing that only Alexis does is parenthetical under-exaggeration reality check thing. That's the only, like, characteristic of her voice, but everything else feels exactly the same.
Yeah, but it's, like, written in the same tone. Like, normally when people, like, do that kind of thing, like, the tone dips low. Like, you're not whispering intently, like, you know what I mean? Like, but, like, it just reads straight on. Like, there's nothing that it didn't need to be in the parentheses. It just reads like a sentence you repeated.
You don't always have to put the under-exaggeration, you know?
Yeah.
You can just say, like, if you just say the thing, it's like, that problem with people doing, like, almost. It's a similar kind of problem.
Oh, yeah, and I hate that. You know how much I hate that.
I know you do. Like, where people will say, something jumped out at me and I almost screamed.
Well, yeah, just scream. I don't even know the almost.
Yeah, like, you either can scream, or, like, it would be a stronger sentence in this moment most of the time to describe what your character actually does instead of what they almost do.
Almost
there are very few scenarios where almost serves the scene.
Like, you almost caught something and it dropped and it broke. Like it has to have, like, a meaning for what you're doing.
And even then, you can restructure that sentence. Like, that is, like, an example of, like, one of the things that we should be talking about in terms of, like, momentary telling versus showing. Like, people tend to use a lot of the same exact examples in ways that aren't very helpful for people.
Yeah, people don't understand what people are saying when it's...
Yeah.
The telling versus showing is, like, a structural issue and not something you just throw a sentence on and, like, fix it. It should be coming from, like, the inside of the story. Like, every part of it should facilitate that. And not just, like, instead of saying says, do this a bunch of, like, purple prose horseshit. Like, no, guys, that's not how... No.
Yeah. A lot of people think that, like, more words equals more showing.
Yeah.
Instead of it being about, like, creating sensory experiences. And also, you don't always need to create a sensory experience to make a sentence work. Sometimes something very short and sweet works so much better. Like, if you write something like... This is very much like a Sarah J. Maasism also.
Yeah.
Like, coming back to ACOTAR is, like, his mouth quirked up at the corners or something like that instead of just, like, he smiled. You can just say he smiled.
And it's like, we should understand why he smiles and what he's smiling about through the context of the paragraph of the story as a whole. Like, that's what people mean by that. Like, you say your character is sad, but you never have this character act in sad ways or have a sad story or a character arc that facilitates sadness. You're just telling us that instead of showing us that.
And sometimes, like, you can portray showing through much subtler ways than a lot of people will say when they try to, like, give examples. Like, because you can create a tone of sadness without saying that a character is crying or a character is holding back tears or whatever.
Yeah, we are told constantly that she wants to die and is suicidal. We are never shown actions of her doing that, or the story does not support actions of her suicidality.
She doesn't, like, self-harm. She doesn't attempt to put herself in dangerous situations. There's one moment where she sort of lists towards the edge of a cliff as they're running, but she just sort of gets, like, grabbed and brought back on track, and she's like, oh, whatever. It feels very much in the moment like she is just sort of exhausted and has to be dragged along because she's exhausted.
Or, like, we're told constantly that she is smart, but she never does smart things.
She's fucking so stupid! She's so infuriatingly dumb! Oh my god!
This is not related at all to this story, but rather to, like, the way people think a little back. Like, the kind of, like, showing and telling and how, like, you feel like you can, like, just, like, slap a fresh sentence on there and call it good. This is a massive stretch, but I've been noticing a lot, is that people will put, like, what they were nominated for in blurbs that should be dedicated to, like, the summary, or, like, anything, like, how this was made. Like, a nomination isn't an award. I don't really care. You should put that on your extra content, your other about. Like, you didn't win. You were just nominated. That's a big deal, but, like, that shouldn't go into your 100-word thing.
Even if you won, who gives a shit? Put that into your author about page or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like there's just, like, a smoke and mirrors sort of culture reforming around this kind of craft, and it's just, like, I don't
Related
like
to that, like, you know, this is a bestseller. It is not hard to get a bestseller, you guys. That's not a selling point of a book.
No, especially if it's, like, inflated by how bad it is. Like, anything can be a bestseller, fuck.
you can get a bestseller by having an existing fan base that buys your book all at once when it comes out. That, like, it doesn't mean anything about quality. It just means that you're popular. Popular things are very rarely good.
And also, like, so people skirt around it and not necessarily mention, like, where the award is from, and then you have to, like, look it up, and it's like, oh, you bought this, or, oh, it came from something different that was not related to the story at all. Like, this is, like, a science award you got because you're working on science as well. It's just, I don't know, the culture's so duplicit right now. It's very strange. And it supports books like this.
I mean, yeah, because it's just hustle culture bullshit. Like, because everybody is just trying to do whatever they can to get attention onto their stuff, because it's attention economy stuff. Like, if you make your money based on the eyes that are looking at your work, you need to do everything that you possibly can in order to pull those eyes.
It's demoralizing,
and it's disgusting. Yeah,
it's disgusting.
The way that people act, I'm not disgusted necessarily with the individual. Some people, I'm disgusted with them as individuals, but, like, I'm not disgusted with every individual who has to do stuff like this. It is the culture that forces people to behave in these duplicitous ways that disgusts me.
Yeah.
I am disgusted by Jasmine Moss
she might
after
be
reading this book.
She's probably, like, there's no way she's not at least a little homophobic in real life. I feel like you have to twist yourself in a bit of a pretzel to get some of these sentences down. And, like, the sexual assault scene where they're fucking in the altar or whatever, and she, like, apologizes to her fanfic guys that she's lost her virginity to these two guys instead of that fictional math people. That was really bad to read. Listen.
Well, he's not fictional. He's just from
history, whatever.
She also, like, she does this joke where Jasmine will have her be like, oh, I fantasize about Carl Goss shirtless. And it's like, okay, well, make that part of her character. Make her, like, legit into old men, you fucking coward. Like, have her not be interested in these dudes because they're too young for her tastes. Like,
yeah, that'd be fun. Like, that's another thing. Like, people give characters traits that they think stand out and are quirky and are marketable, and they won't put that into, like, the fiber of the story. And that's another thing. Yeah. It's like, you can't just, like, slap some traits down and have that be, like, a thing. Like, it has to do something. It has to matter.
Yeah, nothing about Alexis ever matters to the story that she is in, because she does nothing. She is truly just like a fucking wet piece of fish that is laying on this story, dying and smelling bad.
That's a good summary for the story. You wrote a really good story. You went through and read them to me, so did Michael, because I think he was in the call, right? We were doing the reviews at the same time. Reading Storygraph reviews.
The Storygraph reviews.
Yeah.
Some of the, like, low-rated Storygraph reviews are really fucking good.
Old treat for you to mosey on through them.
You might find mine on there, because I left a very low, very harsh review on Storygraph.
A realistic review. Someone's gotta leave some realistic reviews. People are so, like, you can be like, I think this is a little tacky, and people are acting like you attack the righteousness of the IP or whatever, and it's just like, magazines used to tell people to kill themselves, like, in print, so I feel like we can vibe a bit. It's just everyone has to be, like, nice core, because they have, like, a fantasy of working together or whatever, and it's just like, I don't care what Jasmine sees or hears. I don't care for her. I don't think we'd ever work together. It's not realistic or relevant to care what this person, you know? To care what this person thinks.
Critics and reviewers, the things that we say are not intended for, like, we're not advising the author on what to put in her stupid book.
Yeah.
We're sharing our opinions. And the fact that, like, so many people feel, like, it's such a thing with, you know, current, like, debut authors and stuff, have to make secret, special, hidden Goodreads accounts to give honest reviews of stories that they read, or, like, just don't share their honest feedback on things that their peers are writing, because they're afraid of being perceived as a bully for having an opinion that someone's book is ass. Yeah, like, I'm sorry, some people are just not good writers. It's not your fault for perceiving that they suck ass.
Where it lies is, like, someone can tell you anything, and it's up to you how to, like, interpret it and see the value, like, whether it's valuable or not.
Yeah.
If someone's just rocking up to you, being an ass, you're like, well, that person's being an ass. But, like, all criticism and critique is not without merit. And even, like, merit stuff you don't necessarily have to listen to or stuff, but it's, like, up to you, the person making something, to, like, decipher that. Not that there should be an total absence of people saying words. It's just gonna happen.
It does feel bad when it feels like you are putting a lot of yourself into your art, and it feels like people not being receptive towards it is a rejection of you personally.
Yeah.
If you feel that way, you are too thin-skinned to be sharing your art publicly.
Like, that looks like there are historical people from the past who are, like, authors we know to be famous now, or screenplay writers, or whatever else, who would receive, like, a newspaper critique and, like, pass out for 3 days on a bender or whatever. And, like, that's fine. You can do that. It's just, like, you don't need to make it anyone else's problem.
Yeah. As long as it stays being your own problem.
It's funny that.
Whatever. Like, you can have a dramatic fainting spell about it if you want.
Yeah, and then people would write about it in their diaries, and they'll see it in the future. But, like, you are robbing the future generations of seeing your dramatic ass by being like, no critiques ever, you know?
We're being very harsh critics, because that's sort of our bit that we do.
Yes.
I would not say I am being hyperbolic about my feelings about this story, or about anything that we have covered. Just so much of this book is really, really pointless, is sort of the problem at the end of the day. Like, you could keep the dumb, cringe humor and the bad sex or whatever in, and...
nonsensical world building.
Yeah. All of that, all of the sort of, like, surface-level, infuriating things, and I still probably wouldn't be angry enough at the book to want to review it if the book hadn't been as pointless as it was.
Yeah, like, it's only not only bad, but it's boring, which is, like, worse than being bad.
Yeah. Like, Theros is essentially the arc villain, right, of the book.
Yeah. We
meet him 3 times. The 3rd time is when he is doing the kidnapping. Right?
And,
we meet him once. He shows up in the classroom and shows off that he has a power which is an impenetrable shield. So we know immediately, oh, okay, that's relevant. This is a Chekhov's gun that we're seeing here, that he has a magic shield, and it's gonna come up that someone's not gonna be able to get through his magic shield.
Like, everything you get is going to be used almost immediately. The fact that we don't get it immediately is only impressive in the sense that everything else is, like, the next paragraph after, and that's because he's a big bad, so you're like, oh, I see.
Yeah, but, like, we barely see him. The second time we see him, he is at the symposium.
Like, it should be a betrayal, right?
Which is basically a sex club. It's really stupid that he's called...
Yeah, it's really stupid.
It should not be called the symposium.
There's a horrible, like, sirens are sex slaves, and, like, Jasmine Moss via Alexis as her mouthpiece is like, well, I guess I can see that they deserve it because they have large boobs and stuff. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What?
It's so weird.
You can't say that. Another thing she can't say is in the world building, like, people...
Yeah, oh my god, I completely forgot to talk about this until so deep into the... Yeah, the half-human Spartan children are called mutts? You can't say that!
You can't say that! And there's also, like, a caste of Spartan people called creatures? No, you can't say that either!
Because they're not Spartans, but they're technically immortal in a similar way to Spartans.
Yeah,
but
really
they have,
weird.
like, animal attributes. It's like,
very strange.
She does not fucking explain what a creature is. She doesn't explain anything. She just says Spartans and creatures. What? But centaurs are apparently different, because she also later brings up that centaurs are real, but also they're men with horse heads.
Yeah, she tries to be really cute with it. Like, oh, I'm seeing true. She's rewriting and trying, like, oh, you thought what a centaur is? I got you. It's just like, okay. That's nothing, I guess.
But also, yeah, like, sirens are arbitrarily, like, a kind of creature who, like, lives in this world, and they are a caste of sex slaves because even though they're, like, intelligent creatures, they speak a language that nobody else is capable of speaking or learning for some reason, which isn't how language works.
No, yeah, so that renders them, like, rightless? because they're kind of like stacked to the gods, and that makes them sex slaves. It's very... Oh.
But also, like, they're like, crazy, horny, hypersexual, and also, like, Jasmine can't decide whether or not she wants to portray them as actual sex slaves or not. Like, I think she forgot about the fact that they're enslaved. Because, like, when Alexis is able to speak to them, and when one of them speaks to her, the girl starts, like, sobbing, crying, because she is so, like, relieved that a Spartan can understand them. But then they just sort of, like, hang out and play cards with her for a while, and they don't try to talk to her about, like, their plight or anything. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know what she was going for with that.
It's so very strange that the two of them die. And
yeah. They're just sort of loose bodies to be chucked around and to, like, titillate the audience. And to show off that, like, Charon plays piano and is, like, you know, a sex god. It's so fucking stupid. His name is Sex, apparently, because his magic power is that he can, like, his power is fucking really stupid. Like, if he touches someone, he can make them experience whatever he's feeling, which is, like, that's a lame-ass power. It's not like, scary.
Why is it chthonic? Yeah, it's nonsense. It should be, like, how she kind of frames as though, like, the Olympians have, like, physical powers, and chthonics have, like, emotional powers, and that's scary. Also, like, Alexis is this massive chthonic bigot. It's so strange. But, like, with the sex slave stuff, it's framed as though they are doing something indecent to Alexis, and therefore they have, like, earned their murderation. It's really dire. I don't know about it. Because, like, on some level, we're supposed to agree with this. We're supposed to think Alexis's, like, point of view is, like, oh, she needs this to be ripped from her from the love interest or whatever. But also her point of view is really nasty. It's nasty all around. It's a nasty story. Like, not in a fun way.
And, like, not every main character, or not every character in any way has to be likable.
Yeah.
You can have a book full of entirely unlikable characters.
There's
the problem is,
like
I don't think Jasmine knows that Alexis is unlikable. I don't think she knows that the characters are, like, unfun to read about. Like, that's the thing. Like, even if characters are unlikable, I should still get something out of reading about them. There should still be something compelling about them. Nothing is compelling about these freaks.
There's parts in the book where, like, oh, I want to see where this is going, then it stops being like that. Like, you don't want to see where anything is going because you want the book to be over.
She can't keep up any momentum, and she has structured the entire story around having no momentum because she decided that a good fucking 60% of the book was going to be taking place in a miserable, wet boot camp where all they do is read books, take tests, and run up a mountain. And there's nothing really else that happens. There's no substance. We don't learn anything about the world that is, like, material or interesting. There's no interesting dynamics that are going on between all the initiates.
We don't learn anything terribly relevant about the society she's entering via, like, the story that she's, like, in class and stuff. And that's, like, where you would introduce that. We just learn, like, the most relevant thing before the next scene sometimes, and that's it. It's so barren of any kind of, like, curiosity or, like, interest in the world she's building or anything. Like, there's not even an interest in, like, fashion or, like, emotional dynamics. You know, like, sometimes people write something and you can tell they're only interested in, like, character dynamics or, like, what everyone's wearing. There's not even that. There's not even an interest in food or anything. There's nothing here. Like, why are you writing?
Yeah, she describes Alexis seeing, like, big mounds and plates of food and being so blown away. She doesn't describe the food that she's eating most of the time. She's just like, I grabbed a chunk of cheese. I ate some grapes. Like, she doesn't talk about, like, the richness of sensory experiences that Alexis is going through, being thrust into this really, like, luxurious, high society situation. Yeah. She can barely be fucked to describe the ocean, the most beautiful thing that there is. To compare this to something I read kind of recently as well, I did A.M. Shine's The Watchers back in November, and, like, that's not an amazing book. I wasn't super into it, but it also had, like, the vast majority of the book takes place in one small, harsh location where everyone's just miserable and they hate each other. And Shine is able to get away with it by having the status quo of the place constantly be shifting, like from our perspective as the audience, and by like honing in on the character dynamics and the way this suffering changes them. And Shine makes the cabin in the forest feel real and threatening, whereas Moss basically uses the Spartan Academy as like a fridge to stick Alexis in until the plot can happen. She's just not willing to put in the work.
Like I said before, ages ago, when we started the thing, it's like, she's alarmingly stupid. She's alarmingly incurious about the world she's writing and exists in as a human being, the author, I believe.
Like, it seems like she just constantly forgets what kind of story that she's telling.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Everything feels completely arbitrary and completely perfunctory in order to get to the scenes that are serving the core fantasy, which is the, like, enemies to lovers reverse harem.
Yeah.
And not even, like, an actual enemies to lovers, just, like, bully reverse harem.
And it's a really reverse harem. I don't really feel like it hits those tropes correctly. Like, I'm not one for chasing tropes or anything, but I don't feel like
but I'm willing to bet that Bonds of Hercules is gonna end up being closer to, like, a reverse harem.
Yeah, but, like, the first book wasn't hitting that. This is nice. Which I guess, like, you can be like, oh, because it's gonna be a series, she's actually going to, like, pace it out, but I just think she doesn't know what's appealing about that. Also, can we talk about the headers? She puts these stupid
Yeah, the art that goes over every chapter is like the one for Alexis is perfectly fine, but then she uses like variants of like, I think they're the statue of David for the boys, and the one for Charon, he has sunglasses. And it looks like, the first time we saw that, it stopped me in my fucking tracks because I could not believe what I was seeing.
I could not believe that was real there.
And then Augustus's, he's in like a 3-piece suit, and he has like a scar across his cheek because that's Augustus's thing.
I feel like she really wants you to think the raccoon's fucking funny.
The suit thing is so fucking stupid.
It's so
I don't think she knows what a toga is, the way that she talks about togas.
It's definitely not meant to be, like, muscle fetishy, but it comes across like freak muscle gun fetish mafia Omegaverse AU.
Yeah, this feels like it was meant to be some kind of, like, mafia kidnapping thing. This would have been better if she had just forgotten about all the fantasy shit and just written the, like, Greek-Italian mafia thing. Because this has nothing to do with Greece other than Achilles and Patroclus living in Greece and some people having Greek names. Everyone speaks Latin for some reason, but they have the, like, Greek versions of their names. And, like,
so
she's just, like, obsessed with Rome. And, like, the Spartans have been living in the Italian Dolomites for thousands of years now for some reason. And because like just write like a fucking mafia story, because that's clearly what you're into. You're into like giant beefy shadow daddies strapped to the nines with guns.
Okay, like these characters are always described. There was guns strapped to their bulging thighs, their muscles rippled in their suits as they reached for a third gun strapped to their chest, bullets laced in holders across their rippling biceps.
They're described in the kinds of words that I would use to describe like Bara muscle cock art.
Yeah. That's how I was imagining them using it.
But, like, they're very clearly just supposed to look like Captain America, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she has art on her Instagram for them. They're supposed to, like, generic,
it's so
like...
ugly.
Yeah.
Sorry to the artist. It looks bad.
They look like dating sim straight art is what it looks like these are. Like, there's a type of dating sim that's just, like, straight people... Like, they kind of have, like, fantasy plots, but it's very much, like, porno Mad Libs, and all the art kind of looks like that. Like, I guess if you're into straight guys in that way, or whatever, like, their veins get described, they're covered in calluses, they're, like, rippling manhoods.
The veins is so fucking funny. Like, are people really into veins that much?
People...
Like, for real?
People talk about that, and it's like, I don't think we're into the same thing. To check in their watch, the golden cufflinks glint in the sun, or whatever the fuck. Their toga suits.
Yeah, she can never decide if they're in a toga or a suit. They'll sometimes be described as wearing, like, a different item of clothing at two parts of the same scene, like
people got, like, unbuckled. It's the part of the book I quote-unquote like. There's a part where he's, like, watching her kill this kid. He's like, I reached underneath my toga and unbuckled my pants to release my boner to have less pressure on it. Like,
Charon, like, there's a couple of points where, like, we figure out later, like, what is going on, but there's a couple of points where Charon is described as, like, limping after interacting with Alexis, and we were joking, like, oh my god, does he have a boner? Is that what's going on here? But no, he has, like, a fucking injured leg. She's just, like, really bad at explaining what's going on in any given scene.
Like, him having a boner is much funnier. I know, she's trying to do,
his boner was so big and hard that it hurt his leg permanently.
Oh no. Like, she's building it up so they, like, have something to relate to. Like, he got injured and it's real trauma from family abuse or whatever. But it's gonna be stupid, so it's just funny that he's a horn dog. It's just a better character or whatever.
I just want him to be, like, a horny vampire. God damn it. That is one of, like, the 3 things in the story that make us immediately fucking scream every time that we see it, because it's so funny every time, unintentionally. Like, the adjusting bulges thing, because the way that she describes it is so vile. Special drink is mine. That's the one that makes me fucking go crazy. I love special drink. And I activated my power.
That made me scream. I was also like, I can't read this shortly after that.
Oh, God, it's so
Activating
good.
my powers is like the 3rd sentence in. You know you're in for a treat.
It's, like, I activated my power, I feel like, is the most characteristic line of the entire book, because I feel like it so perfectly describes how little effort or care she is putting into any of this. Like, yeah, they might as well just activate their power.
It reads like you're on a roleplay forum, and it's like a lit roleplay forum, right? Like, with a word count, and you're, like, in a thread with someone who can't write, right? That's what it feels like you're chat with. So they, like, are doing, like, a lot of...
It feels like I'm trying to read a light novel.
Yeah, very light novel. It does feel like we're chugging through a light novel to get to the rest of the illustrated stuff. And that's formatted kind of like that.
Special drink is also fucking awesome.
Oh, I can't believe. The way she handles that is, like, her parents make this bleach concoction, and then they just, like, slosh out to by the lake for the other people in the trailer park to slurp up on their hands and knees. She's not worded like that, but it's hard to have that mental image of what would go on. Like, you mean moonshine, girl? That's not how moonshine is made.
She doesn't know how people make bathtub gin. She doesn't know how people make alcohol. She describes it as being cleaning product and bread yeast. What are you talking about?
My special drink. I'm activating my special drink.
They don't have a still or anything.
The foster thing, like, they still have to go to school. Like, the gods adapt to what I already said, it's Western capitalism. They have, like, a weapons manufacturing that brings them billions of dollars. Why don't they...
Who's buying dollars money? What?
Yeah.
They spend food vouchers to eat.
How's the ancient Greek coin pronounced? Drachma?
Drachma, yeah.
Drachma. She never uses it in the book, right?
No, not a once. She uses American dollars.
Yeah.
I don't think she knows that other countries have different currency.
No, probably not. Us reading this had stirred that in my brain, like, the knowledge that I knew what that was, and I was writing some, like, world building, like, oh, I need, like, coin words, and I wrote that down because that sounded like a good fantasy thing, and I googled it, like, oh, that exists. That was already in my brain. Why was it on my brain? Did she mention it at any point? She's, like, unleashed, like, a sleeper
You might have seen that because I used that word in a snippet of something that I sent you a little while ago.
Oh, it's probably it. Like, I probably also knew what it was, because I have an interest in world culture and stuff.
Yeah, in history, yeah. You like knowing things about the world.
Yeah, but I was like, why? It's like, you know how something gets really prominent in your brain, you're not sure how that was retrieved at all? Yeah.
It's extremely U.S. American centric in a way that doesn't feel like
it's when Florida centric.
Oh my god. So it takes place in Montana, right? Uh-huh. And I don't think Jasmine knows anything about the cold or snow, because she is Like, my breaking point, if I hadn't been reading this aloud and been determined to get through the whole thing, is that she has a point where, actually, there's two things that, like, made me feel like my brain is melting out of my skull. The first one was that she said that the Montana winters made your bones brittle, like, implying that the cold literally makes your bones brittle, so it had caused her to break bones from the cold? But also that, like, she had been walking on ice and, like, fallen on a piece of ice and it had stabbed into her body? What are you talking about?
And then, like, she described, like, Montana's spring rain as being warm. Like, girl, it's Montana, it's not warm.
Yeah.
Unless, like, the nuclear bombs that fucked up the environment that badly, but, like...
One of the things that caught my attention is that, like, Poseidon's air is called Vorax.
Yeah.
Which is just vortex without a T.
She's really bad at
weird.
Names.
She's so bad at names.
Her name, for the main character, the reveal of why it's called Blood of Hercules is because Alexis is fucking Hercules.
Like, her name as a baby was Hercules, and she was, like, family home was, like, attacked by titans, and someone, like, took her, but he got her blood on him, and she started, like, accidentally attacking her with evil blood powers and almost killed him. You know, he tried to... They call it leaping? It's teleporting. He tried to teleport with her. It's not as bad as winnowing, but it's still fucking stupid. They're in the middle of the forest, and, like, her blood activates its powers, and he passes out from the pain, and then he wakes up and the baby is gone, and I guess she was, like, dropped off in foster care or whatever.
Via the fate, I guess? It's very loosey-goosey.
Yeah, probably fate did it, because it was supposed to be, like, this is how they're getting around the chthonic marriage law thing.
Yeah. So, like, I guess
and
you can
this
extrapolate...
was a 20-year plan in order to, like, make sure that they have, like, chthonic pussy on tap.
Yeah, so kind of like fate is the antagonist to the book, if you think about it, I guess.
I think Jasmine is the antagonist of the book because she made us read it by writing it. Oh, it doesn't make any fucking sense for Augustus and Charon. Like, they're doing it because it is a bully romance and they need to be doing it for the fantasy. It does not make sense for them to bully her if they want her to cooperate with them. There's straight up no reason for them not to be fawningly nice to her and trying to seduce her.
It's the same problem with, like, a lot of, like, pregnancy, like, horror fetish fantasy, right? Like, I brought up before on this podcast that you were listening to, but the whole thing with, like, demonic possession baby stuff, like, if you want the woman to, like, carry the seed of evil, I don't think you should be spinning her around and, like, doing crazy evil stuff. That's not really productive to your end goal. I guess that applies here, too?
That makes sense in the sense of, like a theological perspective where, like, it's about, like, how evil is, like, inherently self-defeating by being evil. And, like, maybe that's the point here as well, that, like, they're so evil and fucked up and twisted that they can't, like, even...
She frames them like they're devils, right?
Yeah, they constantly talk about her, you know, them being the devil. They're supposed to be smart. Why wouldn't they try to, like, seduce her and, like, convince her to do this willingly instead of in a way, like, where she's going to fight them? Like, they know that she doesn't know anything about this world, and they're, like, mad at her for, quote-unquote, wanting to do the crucible, but she doesn't want to do it. She was forced to do it. She doesn't want to be there. Let her drop out. What the fuck are you guys talking about? No one gave her a choice.
Yeah.
It's so arbitrary.
Yeah, the mystery is set up, like, oh, who's forcing her to do this? Who left out this information? Who, like, right? But that's not... I guess maybe
like, literally everybody has left out this information because nobody tells her. Everybody just, for no reason, assumes that she knows everything about what's going on, even though the Crucible is, like, a secret thing that humans aren't supposed to know about if they're not raised by Spartans.
Yeah, and, like, maybe if that was, like, a kind of, like, the point, like, but it just doesn't feel... It feels like you were doing a lot of logical leaping to make that work.
It's an idiot plot.
Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely no reason for anyone to assume that she is doing this of her own
There's no reason
free
to have
will.
a crucible in the first place. Like, this is
Yeah,
a story about
there's no reason for
systems.
any of this to be happening. It's happening because she has to be taught by one of them so that it can be like a sexy student-teacher romance thing. But also, she wasn't creative enough to come up with, like, a good reason for them to be in school. So she was just like, well, they're gonna do, like, a boot camp because their society is, like... I swear to God, her frame of reference has gotta be, like, a combination of Disney's Hercules and 300. So, like, the Spartans are super warlike and fascist, and they kill anyone who's too weak to survive or whatever. But also, she's Hercules because Disney Hercules was, like, lost as a baby and stuff.
It's like, it'd be like something that was like a commentary on, like, how silly eugenics are, how foolish and futile that kind of thing is. But, like, I think she believes
but it's not. She just thinks it's, like, she clearly thinks it's, like, sexy. Like, because that's the operative fantasy here, is that, like, wouldn't it be sexy if, like, an alpha male, like, like a dark Sigma bad boy was gonna, like, knock you up with his crazy shadow babies, like... Because you're so fucking compatible, and his dick is, like, huge.
It's so
and
far
also
away
he's,
from
like, a
it.
genocidal maniac, which is, like, kind of sexy when you think about it.
It has, like, all of that just really shallowly, so it ends up being, like, repellent.
But also, then, like, Augustus, who's the love interest with the most screen time, is just a detestable, sexist pig, and that's also supposed to be sexy.
I know a certain kind of person just, like, saying the same sentences, saying the same words, Mad Libs, porn over and over again to anything, and just, like, that doesn't do it for me. I feel like that's... I'm understanding what it's titillating in general, like...
Well, Wednesday, in our society, there are people we know as gooners. And... I'm not going to continue that because I ideologically disagree with the way that people talk about gooning or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought that would be a funny thing to say.
It was a funny thing to say, it was. Yeah, at least people who are doing, like, gooner, like, fetish stuff are, like, genuinely into, like, hypnosis and stuff like that. I feel like they're providing the environment with some sort of form of creative expression, more so than this. Like, an average gooning, like, sex fantasy paragraph is more, like, world-building integrity than the story does. 1 out of 5 stars.
I gave it less than that. I think I gave it a half star.
Half star out of 5 stars.
You can give it 1 star. That's fine.
No,
I give it a half star.
No, I was just trying to think of a low rating.
0 stars.
0 stars.
-5 stars. This actively took something away from me.
Yeah! Think of the amount of resources I made to take this book that could have gone to anything else on the planet. The electricity, the water, the paper, the ink, the labor, the shipping, the emissions.
The time.
This actively took away from the world in large quantities.
We need to send her to jail. This is a war crime, I think. Based on the amount of resources that were wasted to produce this book.
Like, we're like prison, abolitionists, but, like, we need to make jail too, specifically for this sort of business.
No, it'll be rehabilitative.
Okay, yeah. She can take some writing classes. What else? Oh, right. Oh, this isn't specifically Montana really. This is just her being stupid related. She mixes up solstice and equinox in one passage.
Yeah, she says the summer equinox.
Yeah, like, girl, those are not synonyms. Those are different things. You're like 30 with supposed degrees. Like, it's on the fucking calendar.
She's gotta be, like, really good at something in real life, and she has to, like, make a bunch of space in her brain to be so good at the thing that she does in real life that she's really good at. Maybe she's, like, an amazing lawyer, and that's why she's so bad at writing.
Okay. Someone was like, this girl, this is the world's greatest lawyer. I want to hire her illegally, and she won't know because she's also stupid. But she's just so good at being a lawyer.
Fully like a Phoenix Wright-ass plotline.
Yeah! Oh my god. Phoenix Wright writes like a really terrible novel under a pen name. It's awful. It's garbage. But he's still like, you know, a great lawyer.
He finally makes enough money to live on comfortably off the royalties from this terrible book that he's written.
Yeah, so he can like do lawyer stuff like the way he wants to without fear of being like fired.
Well, he's never gonna be fired. He runs his own thing.
Oh, right. I only have a vague awareness.
He's just, like, struggling to get by. He's just, like, broke.
Right, because he lives in expensive city, Japan, California.
Or, like, he defends clients that he thinks are innocent, I feel like is part of the premise of Phoenix Wright.
I should get into them really hardcore.
I have played a little bit of Phoenix Wright, but I didn't do it in order. I wasn't given the first game, and I didn't realize that I wasn't given the first game.
Oh, that's so fun, though. Like sometimes it creates, like, an understanding of a series that people don't have when you accidentally play them out of order or read something out of order, you know?
I guess. Like, it was mostly frustrating and confusing for me.
Well, that's true. It's like it's very, like, a linear narrative, isn't it?
From what I understand, yeah, it's fairly linear in terms of, like,
character you to, like, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of bold to have games like that from that, like, developer.
But also, like, part of the premise, I do have to say, part of the premise of Phoenix Wright is that he's a very bad lawyer, actually. He's not good at being a lawyer.
There's, like,
he literally has, like, a psychic who walks around behind him and tells him what's going on.
That's fun. I should get into hardcore, and then we have, like...
And, like, contacts the ghost of a better lawyer.
That's awesome.
Hey, thank you for listening. This isn't usually what we do here, obviously, but if you liked the show and you like horror and internet culture, check us out. Leave a like and a review, share us with your friends, and go take a peek at our other show, Dear Evelyn. This has been the Creepypasta Book Club. Thank you, and good night.